Hello, good evening and welcome to World Today. I'm Gautam Roy and this is the show where we take you for a trip around the world and get you all the updates that have been making headlines in all corners of the globe. And today we'll specifically be talking about how our External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has made his first visit as Foreign Minister of India to Israel, and a lot has been happening there that we can talk at length about with our special guest as well. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at our headlines. India and Israel will be resuming FTA talks. That's an outcome of the meeting between Dr. S. Jaishankar and his counterpart in Israel. He's on a visit to Tel Aviv. EM has tweeted saying discussed a wide range of regional and global issues, agreed to resume FTA negotiations next month, agreed in principle on mutual recognition of COVID vaccination certification. UK police treats killing of Conservative MP David Amess as a terrorist incident, arrests Ali Harbi Ali, the son of an ex-media advisor to a former Prime Minister of Somalia. Search address said to be linked to UK lawmaker stabbing suspect. Extreme climate change wreaks havoc in different parts of the world. Cumbre Vella volcano continues to erupt in Spain. Canary Islands also continue to burn. In India, heavy rains throw life out of gear in Kerala. In sports, Tottenham Hotspurs register a 3-2 victory over Newcastle United at St James's Park. Tanguy Ndombele, Harry Kane and Son Heung-min score in the first half after Callum Wilson gives Newcastle an early lead. And Cameron Norrie becomes the first Briton to win the Indian Wells title. Norrie beats Nicolas Basilashvili 3-6, 6-4, 6-1 to seal one of the biggest titles in tennis. And it's time now to kick off the show with the big news of the day. Well, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is on an official 5-day visit to Israel. The External Affairs Minister visited places of historical significance to India, demonstrating the country's long-term presence in the region and constructive role played in shaping the history of the region. India and Israel elevated bilateral relations to a strategic partnership during the historic visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Israel in July 2017. This is Dr. S. Jaishankar's first visit to the country as External Affairs Minister. The External Affairs Minister tweeted, saying started the day by unveiling a plaque commemorating the Bhudan Grove planted by Sarvodaya workers in 1960. India-Israel relations have many facets and many contributors. He also tweeted saying very productive talks today with APM and FM Yair Lapid. That's the next one, in fact, and we'll move to that very quickly. Yes, take a look at that. That picture also tells its own story, and he tweeted about it as well, did Dr. S. Jaishankar, and said that he had a very productive session with the Israeli Foreign Minister, and they have agreed to resume FTA negotiations next month. Also agreed in principle on mutual recognition of COVID vaccination certification. That's what Dr. S. Jaishankar has tweeted a short while ago, that he's had a very productive session with his Israeli counterpart and discussed a wide range of regional and global issues, and has also agreed to resume FTA negotiations next month, that is in November, and to facilitate travel, which is very important in this COVID era, recognition that is mutual in principle, agreement of mutual recognition of each other's vaccines. Now, he also met members of the Indian Jewish community in Israel and hailed their manifold contribution to the ties between the two countries. The External Affairs Minister expressed confidence that Indian Jewish community in Israel will bring the two countries even closer together in the coming years. The minister also expressed sentiments previously echoed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi that India's relationship with its Jewish diaspora community in Israel is one of mutual trust and friendship. He added that expansion of innovation and trade partnership between our two knowledge economies is the need of the hour.
Also share similar challenges to our society from radicalism and terrorism, apart from many other emerging developments on the geopolitical landscape. The real thrust, however, is to expand the innovation and trade partnership between our two knowledge economies. For example, while we collaborated to tackle COVID-19, can we take that to the next level? How should we further augment the contact and collaboration between scientists, students, and startups? I'll be discussing these issues and others in my meetings during my visit. Next year marks the 30th anniversary of full diplomatic relations between India and Israel. India is celebrating the 75th year of our own independence. In 2023, Israel too will be celebrating the 75th year of its independence. These occasions are significant milestones to start new voyages and to cover new horizons.
And Dr. Jaishankar also went on to highlight the community's contributions in enriching India's literature and art. The External Affairs Minister said that the signature tune of All India Radio has been composed by an Indian Jew.
Of course, the community has excelled as poets and artists in India. The name Nissim readily comes to mind, whom we honored with the Sahitya Academy Award. And people of my generation, in fact, grew up with the signature tune of All India Radio that was composed by a Jewish exile in India, Walter Bonhoeffer.
And the External Affairs Minister also received a copy of the book Bombay-Mumbai City Heritage Walks by Dr. Shaul Sapir. Dr. Sapir, an Indian-born scholar, was a professor at the prestigious Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And earlier, Dr. S. Jaishankar held a productive meeting with Israeli Chambers of Commerce and the innovation ecosystem. While appreciating their visible enthusiasm for doing more partnerships with India, Dr. Jaishankar stressed that many post-COVID priorities, including digital, health, agriculture and green growth, are natural areas for our collaboration. He also encouraged Israeli businesses to focus more deeply on Indian opportunities and take advantage of our business-friendly policies. And before we talk further about the External Affairs Minister's visit to Israel this time around, let's take you quickly through some of the main points that really emerge and really stand out in the India-Israel relationship. Well, it's extensive economic, science, tech, space, military and strategic relationship, and there is strengthening development, comes sustainability cooperation and people-to-people ties as well. Now, from 1999 to 2009, the military business between the two nations was worth around $9 billion. Now, these strategic ties extend to intelligence sharing on terrorist groups and joint military training as well. Cooperation on top-of-the-line drones, loitering ammunition, radars, missiles and border sensors as well. Now, in 1992, bilateral trade stood at just $200 million. But if you look at what happened in April 2020 to February 2021 alone, bilateral trade went up to $4.4 billion USD, and this excludes, the purchases, defense purchases that have taken place. India is Israel's third largest trade partner in Asia and seventh largest globally. And we have a trade advantage there as well. Trade is diversified into several sectors like pharma, agriculture, water, IT and telecom in recent years. Indian software companies like TCS, Infosys, Wipro and even Tech Mahindra for that matter have been expanding their presence in Israel. Israeli companies have been investing in India in renewable energy, real estate and water technologies. They've also been setting up R&D centers and production units in India. Now, if you look at what happened in 2017, that's a landmark year. Prime Minister Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel, breaking new ground. Again, in the same year, Prime Minister Modi's historic visit saw ties being elevated to a strategic partnership level. Again, the same year, the same visit, first meeting of newly set up India-Israel CEO Forum took place. And the same visit, extensive list of MOUs were signed during the PM's visit, ranging from agriculture to innovation to culture. Now, in December 2020, to just give you a recent reference point, agreement on health and medicine cooperation was also signed during the pandemic era, in the backdrop of the pandemic. Back in 2017, what had happened? Well, record 70,000 Indian tourists had visited Israel, and in March 2018, Air India began running 7-hour direct flights between New Delhi and Tel Aviv 4 times each week. So these are some of the highlights that we can talk about in recent years, really, as far as the India-Israel relationship goes. But what's happening now is what we're interested in talking about, and we have someone who can really tell us about it all. Anil Kumar Trigunath is joining us, former Indian ambassador. Very good evening to you, Ambassador Trigunath. Just tell us, put this particular visit of Dr. Jaishankar in perspective in the first place for us, because it is happening in an interesting juncture where you have to consider not just India-Israel ties, but the entire geopolitical situation as it's evolving around the world.
Yes, you are absolutely right. And you have already given a lot of points and achievements that have been made in our bilateral relationship in the last 30 years. And fortunately, I was part of the team when we upgraded our ties in 1992 with Israel. And since then, I'm happy to see the kind of progress that has happened. This visit of the External Affairs Minister is very important. It is important not only because what all is happening, which you have already mentioned, but because it is also taking place in the backdrop of changes taking place in larger Middle East region. We have seen what has happened. New accords have been signed, which are called Abraham Accords.
Yes.
And earlier this week, we had seen the meeting between the Israeli Foreign Minister, the American, and the UAE Foreign Ministers also. And the Americans are trying to expand the outreach of the Abraham Accords by bringing more of the countries. India is great friends both with the UAE as well as Israel. So I think that today there is going to be a sort of a two U's and two I's meeting, USA, UAE, Israel, and India. That is another important thing. Our relationship is strategic during Prime Minister Modi's time. And another thing that is happening is that this visit is taking place in the backdrop of a new government there. Because for last dozen odd years, we had seen that it was Benjamin Netanyahu who was really the driver of this relationship. And therefore, it is an important juncture when this visit will enable our Foreign External Affairs Minister to really carry home all the points that India wants, whether it is in cybersecurity, whether it is in the healthcare sector, whether it is through the FTA or the International Solar Alliance, or it is finding some kind of a mutually beneficial projects within the quadrilateral or trilateral formats within larger West Asia. Also, India will have an opportunity of discussing issues in Afghanistan, as you know, what is happening, the regional problems that are happening. Iran obviously will be discussed there. And already there are a lot of centers of excellence under the Eye for Eye, I mean, India for Israel or Israel for India. Yes. Those initiatives through various funding mechanisms are being set up. P2P relationship, we already spoke, is very strong. And we see all the young Israeli armed forces people, after joining, they come to India for relaxation, yoga, culture. All these things are extremely important. Tourism, Bollywood, all those find a lot of traction in Israel. And the Israelis as people, as you have seen last time when we had the problem between Israel and Hamas, that there was a tremendous traction at the popular level on this relationship between India and Israel. So I think that this was very important. Another last point I would like to make is that we are seeing a new kind of a movement taking place within, or alignment, I would say, of various powers, which I call as Cryptarch. China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, Afghanistan, and Qatar to some extent. And so then the Abraham Accord countries, which are UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and some others. So what we are looking at is that this is a situation in which one will have to identify exactly how India can play a more constructive role. Of course, the Palestinian issue is extremely important. India's position has been very clear. It has been articulated, and I'm sure the Israelis would like to tell India what are they planning to do about it, because unless that Palestinian issue is resolved, the peace in the region is going to be extremely difficult, and there will be a lot of hesitations for other Arab countries to move forward, even though clandestinely or internally they all have good relations with Israel one way or the other.
Okay, now let's talk about India as well first before we talk about the larger issues that involve other nations as well. Now, even in this particular visit, the External Affairs Minister has put it out in the open that we will restart negotiations on the FDA. We welcomed Israel into the International Solar Alliance as well. Now, what does all this indicate in terms of what kind of trajectory is the bilateral relationship at least is on at the moment?
See, what I feel is that our bilateral relationship between India and Israel has really is on a high pedestal, irrespective of the governments which come to power. So that is government neutral. Of course, personalities matter, like Prime Minister Modi and Benjamin Netanyahu had very good relations. So that took it to a very different level, to the strategic partnership level. Besides, when we see that what is happening in the Middle East, the more and more countries are trying to, have closer relations, whether with the intervention of the Americans or others. That is also a good thing for India, because see, then it happens with, like, similarly, when we are talking of climate change and the International Solar Alliance, which India had pioneered with France, and Israel signing it means Israel is focusing more on critical technologies, whether it is water related, whether it is energy related, so that there is lesser consumption. So these are some of the good things that we can get. As you know, Israel has tremendous technological advantage and can share a lot of technologies. Secondly, Israel feels at home in sharing all kinds of technologies with India, looks at India as a huge market for their defense product. Today, they are the third largest defense, cyber security, in the intelligence cooperation. So I see our relationship virtually is increasing manifold in the content and the strategic content, to say the least. I mean, that's what I would like to say. So I think similarly, we have agreed to have a lot of joint R&D projects. Innovation is very important in our, so make in India and make for the world. Those are the kind of things that India is working together. The fact that India has decided to reopen the FTA negotiations is also an important initiative, because in India, generally on the FTAs, we have been a little bit circumspect. We have been trying to review whether this FTA will be useful or not. But the fact that during this time, we are bracketing it with our FTA, with the UK, with the US, with some other countries, it shows that which direction we are looking at it, and there is no threat, and there is a mutually beneficial FTA that can be worked out.
Certainly. And the fact that there is in principle agreement to recognize each other's vaccination certificates, how significant is that in terms of ensuring that it's not just about tourism, it's about overall travel, business travel, traveling of those who drive the intellectual cooperation as well between the two countries, not just in science and tech, but in every sphere, even in culture.
Yeah, if you remember that early on, India had supplied about 5 tons of equipment and medicines to Israel in the early on days. And then Israel also sent a lot of its scientists and the doctors and others for training purposes. They were trying to work out some rapid tests together in a joint project. So I find that on fighting the pandemic, there have been a significant collaboration between India and Israel all along. And therefore, it was a natural outcome that Israel understands India's vaccine strengths, its pharmaceutical strengths, and acknowledges it. And that's the reason that the two countries have agreed to and have seen what happened with the UK and with the European Union and some other countries, that India has taken a very strong stance in that. And so India is proud of its achievements as far as vaccines are concerned, proud of its vaccine diplomacy, and which is what is very much, I think the Israelis acknowledge it a great extent, and that's that in my view is an indication and attestation to the fact that India's vaccine prowess is being recognized.
Certainly. And in terms of this meeting, the other meeting that you referred to of the 4 foreign ministers, US, India, UAE and Israel, that will take place a little later tonight itself. How significant is that? Because a lot is being read into it, but is it going to go to the extent of cooperation that perhaps the Quad is already, taken to in terms of not just combating the pandemic, but as far as technology is concerned, the supply chain issues and other areas as well?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we can have, I think there have been some collaboration already going on between UAE, Israel and India, and identifying certain things that we can work together, maybe in Africa or some other countries in agricultural field, where the agricultural technologies that Israel has developed and UAE or the Gulf countries want food security, and India has that expertise in agriculture. So the 3 of them can work together. Now,
yes, both agriculture and water.
Agriculture and water, yes. And similarly, like the USA also wants to identify possibilities where we can work together. We are working already with the USA and Africa and some other countries. But here, I feel that all these 4 countries will find possibilities how they can work together in fintech, how they can work in high tech, how they can work in defense and security areas, in the cyber security areas. So I think there is there are a lot of possibilities, short of, I would say, counter-terrorism definitely is going to be one of the major things, and I would not be surprised if even resolution of the Palestinian issue might be discussed in this.
Okay. The other area that they can perhaps make a big statement on is climate change, renewable energy, sustainability. Even if you talk about what's supposed to be starting, at the end of this month, which is COP26 in Glasgow, they can come together on that front too.
Yes, climate change is going to be discussed everywhere. And as I say that irrespective of a country, irrespective of a relationship, bilateral discussions, whatever, we are going to discuss 4H. And one of them is, H is for hunger. The other is habitat, which is climate change, and the high tech, as well as the health. So these are the 4 issues that are going to underline any relationship or any movement anywhere. So they are going to be discussed irrespective. Now, climate change, which countries are going to meet what kind of targets is another important thing. But the technologies like green technologies in which Israel can also help a great deal. If you visit Israel, they have greened the desert, basically. They have a lot of agriculture with less water usage, that the technologies that they have developed, which are being implemented in India also. So that is going to be the future. So I think that with Israel particularly, and of course with the US and UAE being the 4 major powers, are going to develop some kind of, they'll try to exploit their synergies for a mutual benefit and the regional benefit.
Yes, let's hope that happens, and it happens fast, because that's what the world needs as well, not just these countries themselves. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about it, Ambassador Trigunath. Okay, now moving on. Ali Harbi Ali, the son of an ex-media advisor to a former Prime Minister of Somalia, has been arrested by the British police under anti-terrorism laws following the killing of lawmaker David Amess. More in this report from the UK.
The killing of Conservative MP David Amess is being treated as a terrorist incident by UK police. The interrogation is underway, and during the course, Ali Harbi Ali, the son of an ex-media advisor to a former Prime Minister of Somalia, has been arrested by British police under anti-terrorism laws following the killing of the lawmaker David Amess. The 25-year-old British man has been arrested at the scene on suspicion of murder. Police said they believed he acted alone. They have used additional powers under the anti-terrorism laws to detain him until October 22. Sir David was stabbed multiple times at his constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea in Essex on Friday. The incident took place while he was meeting constituency voters in a church. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited the place where lawmaker David Amess was stabbed to death. Johnson, Interior Minister Priti Patel, and leader of the opposition Labour Party Keir Starmer were among those to lay flowers in tribute to Amess at the scene of the murder. Johnson and Starmer stood side by side in a moment of silence before leaving. Amess is the second lawmaker in a little over 5 years to be murdered while out meeting constituents after Joe Cox was shot and stabbed in June of 2016. a few days before Britain voted to leave the European Union. World Today Desk, DD India.
Extreme weather events and climate change are wreaking havoc in different parts of the world. Amid volcanic eruptions in Spain and floods in Vietnam, India is also bearing the brunt in regions far and wide, from Kerala in the south to Uttarakhand in the north. Heavy rains and snowfall, even snowfall, yes, have taken a heavy toll, claiming over 26 lives, adding urgency to the call for climate action at COP26 starting at the end of this month. Take a look.
These are the visuals of Cumbre Vieja volcano on Spain's La Palma island, which has been erupting for 4 weeks. For the residents of the island, there is no respite yet. On Monday morning, rivers of hot lava continued to flow from the volcano. Lava was streaming down the slopes, keeping street cleaners busy removing accumulated ash on roads. Locals were also constantly wiping tables and sweeping the floors to keep their vicinity clean. The situation on the island is worsening with each passing day, so much so that the president of the Canary Islands, Angel Victor Torres, said that there are no signs that an end of the eruption is imminent. Streams of lava have burnt over 742 hectares of land and destroyed almost 2,000 buildings on the island. According to the Spanish National Geographical Institute, there were 42 seismic movements on the island on Sunday, the largest of which measured 4.3. As the situation gets out of control, the authorities have evacuated about 7,000 people from the Canary Islands. The volcanic eruption also prompted authorities to cancel all 38 flights scheduled to arrive or take off from the island. While in Spain, Canary Islands continue to burn, many other parts of the world are soaked underwater. Heavy rainfall over the weekend has triggered flooding and landslides in Vietnam. 3 people have died in the country, while several others are missing. Over 1,000 houses have been flooded in the country in the flash flooding. The situation in India's Kerala continues to remain grim. Heavy rains have been battering Kerala, triggering landslides and floods which left many dead and wreaked havoc across Pathanamthitta, Kottayam and Idukki districts. Floods triggered by heavy rains have led to loss of life and property in the southern state and brought normal life to a halt. 3 more bodies have been recovered from Kokayar landslide spot. With this, the total death toll reached over 25 in the state due to the unseasonal heavy rainfall. A red alert has been sounded in Idukki as many dams are now overflowing. Meanwhile, massive efforts are underway in Kochi to evacuate trapped people through naval helicopters. Huge damages are reported from Kozhikode district. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has meanwhile urged people in the state to remain cautious and prepare themselves to move to a relief camp, higher ground or safer localities if requested by government officials. In the north, India's Uttarakhand, a red alert warning of heavy to very heavy rain has been issued at isolated places of Dehradun, Tehri, Almora, Pauri, Haridwar, Champavat and Nainital. In view of the weather warning, the state government has directed all district administrations to remain on alert mode. National capital Delhi too has been witnessing rains since Sunday. In Cuba, people were marvelled by a rare waterspout spinning off the coast of Cienfuegos. According to the Provincial Meteorological Center, the waterspout swirled between 4:50 p.m. to 5 p.m. local time. No damage was reported from the waterspout. Climate change concerns all. It urges world leaders, those in authority as well as commoners, to take immediate and substantial steps to curb its impact on mankind. World Today Desk, DD India.
Syria is expected to soon have a new constitution since the government and opposition co-chairs of the Syrian Constitutional Committee have agreed to start the drafting process. Here's a report.
In a major move, Syria's government and opposition groups have reached a consensus to start the process of drafting a new constitution. The news was confirmed by United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen.
For the first time, the 2 co-chairs, the one nominated by the government and the other nominated by the opposition, were sitting down together with me for a substantial and frank discussion on how we are to proceed with the constitution reform and indeed in detail how we are planning for the week ahead of us. The Syrian Constitutional Committee is an important contribution to the political process, but the committee in itself will not be able to solve the Syrian crisis. So we need to come together, do serious work on the Constitutional Committee, but also address the other aspects of the Syrian crisis.
The drafting committee comprised of 45 members of Syria's government, opposition and civil society. They met on Sunday for the first time with Peterson in Geneva, ahead of the week-long talks.
This drafting committee has met 5 times, but after the 5th meeting in January this year, we concluded that we were not making sufficient progress and that we could not continue the way we had been working. Since then, close to 9 months, I've been negotiating between the parties, trying to be able to establish a consensus on how we are going to move forward. And I'm very pleased to say that we have reached such a consensus.
This is the 6th round of drafting committee talks in 2 years, and the first time the parties have met since January 2021. The decade-old war sparked the world's biggest refugee crisis. Syria's neighbors host 5.6 million refugees, and European countries more than 1 million. World Today Desk, DD India.
Closer home, the junta in Myanmar will release more than 5,000 people jailed for protesting against a February coup that ousted the civilian government. A total of 5,636 prisoners will be freed to mark the Thading Youth Festival later in October. That's what the junta chief has said days after he was excluded from a regional summit over his government's commitment to defusing the bloody crisis. More than 7,300 people are currently behind bars across the country, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners. Myanmar authorities released more than 2,000 anti-coup protesters from prisons across the country in July, including journalists critical of the military government. Those still in custody include American journalist Danny Fenster, who's been held since being arrested on the 24th of May. 17 missionaries from the United States and Canada were kidnapped in Haiti on Saturday. The group of 16 U.S. citizens and 1 Canadian citizen includes 5 men, 7 women and 5 children. The kidnapping took place after the missionaries left an orphanage in the crisis-engulfed Caribbean nation. The kidnappers have already made contact with the organization. Officials say they were kidnapped by the 400 Movozo gang, also blamed for the kidnapping of Catholic clergy in April. Haiti has one of the highest rates of kidnapping in the world. Kidnappings have surged in Haiti throughout 2021, with numbers rising nearly 300% since July. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told global leaders and investors in an interaction in New York that India has undertaken several reforms to ease foreign investment in infrastructure, including fiscal benefits, which have created opportunities for investors and industry in the country. At a roundtable organized by FICCI and the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, Sitharaman said, with the current reset in the global supply chains and clear-headed and committed leadership in India, she sees opportunities galore in India for all investors and industry stakeholders. The finance minister is on a week-long tour of the United States, where she met several business leaders and US government officials, including Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, last week. She said India has fully leveraged the potential of digitization even during the most challenging time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pointing to the opportunities in India, the minister said startups in India have grown tremendously and many are now raising money through capital markets. And it's time now to get you some more updates from around the world in News at a Glance.
With Hungary parliamentary election due next year, political situation in the country has started creating buzz. Peter Markizai, a political outsider with no party affiliation, has said he will bid to oust Prime Minister Viktor Orban to take the leadership of Hungary in next year's election. Now, the comment was made by Markizai after defeating leftist Clara Dobrev in an opposition runoff primary on Sunday. Markizai has pledged to bridge divisions in society, clamp down on corruption. Markizai is said to have signed a pact with the political left to help them return to power and raise taxes, labeling him a career leftist. The chair of the Venezuelan opposition negotiating team has urged the government to resume talks at the earliest after President Nicolas Maduro's administration suspended talks this weekend. Maduro's government suspended the conversations after its envoy Alex Saab was extradited to the United States from Cape Verde on Saturday on money laundering charges. The two sides are seeking a solution to Venezuela's extended social and economic crisis, which has plunged a majority of its population into poverty and sent millions abroad looking for opportunities. The Venezuelan government in September named Saab, who was arrested in June 2020 when his plane stopped in Cape Verde to refuel, as a member of its negotiating team. Meanwhile, dozens of people congregated to call for the release of Alex Saab. The United States has also imposed sanctions on Saab for allegedly orchestrating a corruption network that Washington says allowed Saab and Maduro to profit from a state-run food subsidy program. Former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo has vowed to continue in politics until his death. On Sunday, he launched a new party that comes with months after his acquittal by the International Criminal Court. Gbagbo, who was president from 2000 to 2011, returned to Ivory Coast in June after being acquitted in 2019 by the Netherlands-based court on war crime charges. The creation of the new party fueled speculation he intends to run in the 2025 presidential election. In El Salvador, at least 4,000 people took to the streets to air a range of complaints against President Nayib Bukele, from adopting Bitcoin as legal tender to firing Supreme Court judges. Holding banners and signs rejecting Bitcoin, people marched through capital San Salvador. Bitcoin officially became legal tender in the Central American country in September. Bukele proclaimed himself dictator of the Central American country on his Twitter account last month. A Spanish Coast Guard vessel has rescued 44 migrants in the Atlantic Ocean and took them to the port in Gran Canaria. The body of a dead migrant was also brought ashore with the group. The Red Cross said all migrants were men from the Maghreb area. Data from Spain's Interior Ministry showed over 13,100 migrants had arrived by sea to the Canaries archipelago up to September 30th. Now the numbers quoted were double from the equivalent period in 2020. World Today Desk, DD India.
Let's now get you some sports updates. Well, Cameron Norrie became the first Briton to win the Indian Wells title when he fought back from a set and a breakdown to beat Nikolaos Basilashvili. Norrie won 3-6, 6-4, 6-1 against the Georgian to seal one of the biggest titles in tennis. Norrie will rise to a career-high 16th in the world, having started the year ranked 74th after a stunning season where he's reached 6 finals and won 47 matches. Norrie had led in the first set with an early break but was pegged back as the big-hitting Basilashvili took charge. But the Briton, whose resilience and fitness have been the hallmark of a successful year, broke to level and force a deciding set. And Paula Badosa survived a stiff challenge from Victoria Azarenka to produce a gutsy 7-6, 2-6, 7-6 win in the Indian Wells Championship match. Azarenka was 2 points from winning the tournament for a third time and serving when her game began to unravel behind a series of errors. Badosa took advantage and held her nerve in the final tiebreaker, firing a cross-court forehand winner on championship point and then falling to the court in joy. With the win, Badosa becomes the first Spanish woman to win the tournament in the California desert and will move to a career-high world number 13 on Monday. The tournament, which is sometimes called the 5th major, was not held last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic and was pushed back from March to October this year due to the global health crisis. Football now, and Tottenham Hotspurs spoiled Newcastle United's takeover celebrations after claiming a 3-2 victory at St James's Park on Sunday. Tanguy Ndombele, Harry Kane and Son Heung-min all scored in the first half after Callum Wilson had given Newcastle an early lead. Eric Dier scored a late own goal, but Steve Bruce was unable to steer his side to victory on his 1000th match in management. The game was marred by a medical emergency in the stands, which caused play to be temporarily suspended just before half-time. The match resumed after the supporter was stabilized at the ground and went to hospital. It was Newcastle's first match since the club completed a Saudi-backed £305 million takeover last week, and before kick-off, new chairman Yasser Al-Rumayyan and co-owner Amanda Stavely received a standing ovation from the supporters. Ansu Fati scored one goal and won a penalty for another in his first start in nearly a year as Barcelona returned to winning ways by beating Valencia 3-1 at Camp Nou. Jose Gaya opened the scoring in the 5th minute and a stunning strike from distance, but Ansu soon dragged Barca back into the game. The Spain international levelled the scores with a fine solo effort in the 13th minute and then drew a spot kick that Memphis Depay converted just before half-time. Substitute Philippe Coutinho completed the scoring late on as Barca moved up to 7th in the table. Bayern Munich scored 5 goals in the first half as they thrashed third place by Leverkusen 5-1 to return to the top of the Bundesliga. Robert Lewandowski scored twice in the opening 30 minutes, backheeling in the opener before tapping in a second. Veteran forward Thomas Müller struck from close range before then setting up Germany winger Sergei Gnabry to claim his first of the day. Gnabry added his second minutes later from Leon Goretzka layoff. Patrick Schick pulled one back in the second half, and although Manuel Neuer made some fine saves, there was never any danger of the hosts staging a comeback. Victory meant Bayern move up to 19 points, one ahead of Borussia Dortmund, while Leverkusen remained third with 16. Now, a day before Greece was set to light the Olympic flame for the Beijing Winter Olympics, Tibetan and Hong Kong activists protested on Greece's Acropolis on Sunday, alleging human rights violations by China. The two protesters, 18-year-old Tibetan student Sela Zoksang and 22-year-old Hong Kong exiled activist Joey Siu, climbed onto scaffolding in front of the Propilia temple, the gateway to the Acropolis, holding up a Tibetan flag and a sign reading "Free Hong Kong, Revolution," before being detained by police and security guards. The activists, members of the No Beijing 2022 campaign, which calls for the International Olympic Committee to rescind its decision to host the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing, chanted "Boycott Beijing 2022" and "Free Tibet." Well, Beijing is set to host the Winter Olympics in February, but the IOC has faced criticism over its decision to award the country the Games in light of China's human rights record. The human rights activists have also called for athletes to boycott the Winter Olympics. And let's talk cricket now. Well, the T20 Cricket World Cup has finally begun. The last edition was way back in 2016. 16 teams are competing for the coveted title. Fans have been waiting with bated breath for the biggest clash between arch rivals India and Pakistan, which is set for the 24th of October. Here's more.
Cricket fans wait for an ICC cricket tournament with an India-Pakistan clash has finally ended. ICC T20 World Cup, the biggest competition of cricket's shortest format of T20, has begun. In its 7th edition of T20 World Cup, the tournament will be played in UAE and Oman from 17th of October to 14th of November. The competition that was earlier scheduled to be held in India was later shifted to UAE and Oman due to COVID-19 pandemic. In its 2021 edition, 45 matches will be played between 16 teams in the tournament across 3 phases. Qualifying matches will be played in the preliminary round. In this round, matches will be played between 8 teams, where 2 groups of 4 teams have been formed. Sri Lanka, Ireland, Netherlands and Namibia have been placed in Group A, whereas Bangladesh, Scotland, Papua New Guinea and Oman have been put in Group B. The top 2 teams from both these groups will qualify for the Super 12 stage. In Super 12, Group 1 includes Australia, defending world champion West Indies, South Africa and ODI world champion Team England, along with 2 qualifier teams. On the other hand, India, Pakistan, New Zealand and Afghanistan have been put in Group 2 along with 2 qualifier teams. In Super 12, all the teams have to play 5 matches each. The top 2 teams will advance to the semi-finals. Starting 23rd of October, the matches in the round-robin format of the 12 top teams will begin. And the clash of the tournament between India and Pakistan will be a Super Sunday on 24th of October. The semi-finals will be played on November 10th and 11th, and the finals will be played in Dubai on 14th of November. The ICC has fixed 2 time slots for this. The first match on the double-header day will be played at 3:30 p.m. and the second will be played at 7:30 p.m. IST. In previous tournaments, India bagged the title in the first season of the tournament, whereas the final season, which was held in the year 2016, was won by Team West Indies. This time, Team India under the captaincy of Virat Kohli will try to regain the trophy. The Indian team is all set to begin its campaign in the tournament with a match against arch rivals Pakistan in Dubai on 24th of October. Sports Desk, DD India.
And we're all looking forward to that one. Well, it's time now to take you beyond headlines into the world of some non-mainstream but still very interesting news.
The COVID-19 pandemic has affected lives of a number of people across the world. Lifestyle of people have transformed largely and many have been facing issues like stress and anxiety. Amid this, Spain has come up with a crying room which aims to remove the stigma in society attached to mental health, crying and seeking help. Phones are placed in one corner with the names of people visitors can call when they're feeling down. The signboards in this place read, "Enter and cry, I too have anxiety," among others. In Japan, performers balancing long bamboo poles arrayed with paper lanterns displayed their skills in front of Akita Station. The performance is usually held every year in August as the annual Akita Kanto Festival. The event this year was held on a smaller scale with about 30 performers tested for the virus and wearing face shields. An Indonesian cafe is jumping on the bandwagon of global Squid Game craze by recreating some of the games played in the Netflix drama in its cafe space. In a dark room, patrons are greeted by staff dressed like the army in the 9-part thriller, holding toy guns and ushering them towards the end of the room where the red light, green light game starts immediately. Shouting out commands in Korean, the staff immerse themselves as the drama characters while patrons willingly compete in games that feature no prizes. Over 200 customers visit Cafe Strawberry daily, drawn by the game, replicate from the drama and to try food like the Dalgona candy made popular by the hit series. Drone footage gives a unique view of what the statue of Horatio Nelson looks out on from London's Trafalgar Square on a grey autumn morning. Erected in 1843, the statue is one of London's most famous landmarks, commemorating Nelson's the victory over the French at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. The statue is approximately 170 feet high. Looking straight down Whitehall towards Parliament, the statue has watched over a spectacular transformation of London's skyline as the country transitioned from the early Industrial Revolution to the age of the Internet. Passengers in Paris's metro stations may ignore the buskers playing instruments and singing popular tunes, but such a gig is highly coveted by many musicians in France seeking to boost their artistic careers. Clinching a spot to play at Bastille, Gare de Lyon, or in one of the many stations in the city's sprawling transport system, which serves more than 4 million commuters daily, is not a simple feat. French country musician Philippe Pinot recently came to Paris for an audition. The 53-year-old artist is among the more than 1,000 performers vying to be in the list of 300 people who will be granted permits to play. Japan's Princess Mako has attended a ceremony at the Imperial Palace. It was the last ritual ceremony the princess attended as a member of the imperial family before her marriage later this month. The eldest daughter of Crown Prince and Princess Akishino left the Akasaka estate in a car with her sister, Princess Kako. She waved and bowed to reporters and passers-by when the car drove through the Hanzomon gate into the palace. Princess Mako is set to marry former college classmate Komuro Kei on October 26th. She will lose her imperial status and become a commoner. The old airport in the Siberian settlement of Churapcha has been unusable for years, its runway transformed in a swampy field of puffed up mounds and reliefs. Like cities and towns across northern and northeastern Russia, Churapcha is suffering the consequence of climate change, thawing the permafrost on which everything is built. Homes are becoming separated from sinking earth, pipelines and storage facilities are under threat. Roads are increasingly in need of repair. As Russia warms 2.8 times faster than the global average, the melting of Siberia's long frozen tundra is releasing greenhouse gases that scientists fear could frustrate global efforts to curb climate warming emissions. World Today Desk, DD India.
And it's time now to turn the pages of history to find out what newsworthy events took place on this day in the years gone by.
British Broadcasting Corporation or BBC was formed on October 18th in 1922 to launch a nationwide network of radio transmitters. The company was formed by a group of leading wireless manufacturers including Marconi. The first BBC transmission was on November 14th in 1922 from station 2LO at Marconi House in London. On this day in 1931, the American inventor Thomas Alva Edison died. In his lifetime, he held over 1,000 patents, the most famous being the electric lamp, the phonograph and the motion picture projector. On the same day in 1989, East German leader Erich Honecker was stripped of power, ending 18 years of iron-fisted rule as the government grappled with growing public demands for a freer society. The Communist Party hierarchy replaced its 77-year-old leader with Egon Krenz, a Honecker protege and the youngest member of the ruling Politburo. On 18th October in 1997, Guggenheim Museum was officially opened in Bilbao. The museum was inaugurated by King Juan Carlos I of Spain with an exhibition of 250 contemporary works of art. Built alongside the Nervion River, which runs through the city of Bilbao to the Cantabrian Sea, it is one of the several museums belonging to the Solomon Hour. On this very day in 2001, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, ex-wife of former President of South Africa Nelson Mandela, was charged with fraud and theft involving nearly 1 million rand. She was later sentenced to 5 years but avoided jail on appeal. On 18th October in 2006, Mark Holder, the senior International Olympic Committee member who exposed the Salt Lake City corruption scandal, died at the age of 87. World Today Desk, DD India.
And that's all we have for now in this edition of World Today, but all the latest continues right here on DD India. So stay with us.